everybody, how's it going? I'm here today with Adam Dicker. Is that how I say your last name?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And this is a really cool webinar, whatever you want to call it. It's actually a Skype call, but Adam is the man when it comes to domains and has also evolved into some other activities. He's the owner of DN Forum, where I'm a frequent lurker, I guess you'd call it. I have made a couple posts on there, but mostly just there's tons of information on there, and I know there's a lot of very, very smart people. Adam also has a couple things cracking. Adam, do you just want to take a couple minutes and give us a little bit back about your bio, and then I'll fire away some questions that we had from people.
Sure. I mean, a long time ago, I started out buying premium domain names, and I got heavily into that. I picked up my knowledge and started a web design company, nichewebsites.com, and then I got into DN Forum, and I'm constantly buying and selling domain names. I've sold quite a few for 6 figures and a couple for 7 figures, and I enjoy helping people. I started a DNF college to try to help people and teach them the domain industry, and I definitely enjoy that. I like to give back because when I started, people helped me, and I never really knew anything. And back then, it was taboo to give people information because I thought you were creating your own competition, but now it seems to be more okay to do. I was also the vice president of GoDaddy for 3 years, running 11 other departments, including the executive accounts, the Wild West reseller program, and quite a few other things as well. So I've had a lot of experience with domains and things like that.
Awesome. I used to be a fan of GoDaddy. I ran into some issues, and then I moved over to Moniker, and Moniker, again, yesterday was down, and it's been a pain for some of the stuff. Anyway, so yeah, what would you say like your biggest hit to date would be, like thing you're most proud of? Like when people someday talk about Adam Dicker, they're like, man, that's the guy that did X.
Well, I mean, I think it would have to be all the people that I've helped learn the domain industry. About 2.5 years ago, I did a video called How to Sell a Domain Name. It's still the most popular video in the industry. And at the end of all these videos, you'll see in these interviews, I like to give people all my contact information. I like to be readily available, accessible, so if people have questions, or before you go out and waste a lot of money on bad domains, I like to help people and guide them in the right direction. Awesome.
And yeah, I think that's great. And just speaking about value, it comes back tenfold to me. You know, people, and I actually, just a quick funny little story is I wrote a post about how to negotiate the selling or buying a domain, and you know, just from my experience, and so I'm like, oh yeah, you know, make them name the first price and blah blah blah, and I'm like chronicling this over a post, and then you know, the guy, it was actually my last name that I wanted to buy, which is Schoemeker, and so come to find out, like after we didn't read a thing, the guy was reading my blog the whole time. Just go figure. It was kind of funny. So yeah. Anyway, so let's get to some questions if you're ready.
Sure.
Okay. So I think one of the we'll kind of start with, I think, is one of the more hard hitting ones, and kind of work our way back. So in the domain industry, do you feel there's still a good investment?
Yeah, I mean, I am one of the services I run for people because, as I said, as I tell people all the time, is that domaining is 98% sales and negotiation and 2% buying domains, because any idiot can go out and buy domain names. And I did a test with a guy who's an affiliate marketer who wants to get in the domain space, and he just bought a domain name. It was a crappy 5-word domain name for about $15 that he caught in the drops. And he got an offer for $100, and he thought that was great because 15 to 100 ROI in a day is great. You'll never see that in the stock market. And I said, well, let me do the call with you. And we called this guy, and so I talked him up and closed him at $600. So he went from $15 to $600. Now, that's not one of my biggest sales. It got him excited because he sees he could pick up these domains and within a day flip them to the right people for the right amount of money. So do I think there's a lot of money left in domains? Yeah. I think I've only done about 10% of what I'm going to do in the industry, and I've done quite a lot. I enjoy the industry. It's like you. I get up every day, and I love what I do, and I enjoy it. And, you know, there is a lot of money left in the industry for sure.
Yeah, and to all those watching, sorry, I look like I work at Burger King with the headset, but it's so much more clear and with all the stuff going on in my office. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I wrote a script one time that basically raped Google results, and then I would go through and I would, for EDU, military, and government, back when Google used to give, well, the perception was, or the theory was that Google would give more weight to those domains, and I would just find ones that were floating out there that weren't registered. And I'm not talking about like soon to be dropped domains and stuff like that. I'm talking like some of these weren't registered for like a year. And I found like about 15,000 and to date, and I have all the stats on the links, where the links are coming from. It's amazing. I mean, some of them are like presidential campaign domains. It's crazy, but I was thinking about releasing that to the public just because I don't do anything with it. For a while I invested in it and I made them really thin affiliate sites, and they ranked really well for about a week. And then when people would complain about it. So anyway, I thought I did discover a little trick about just redirecting them to some things that I wanted boosted. The interesting thing is they would rank for what they were before on the same page. So anyway, just my little story. I might be releasing that in the future. We'll have to see if I have time just to dig it out and fire it out there. But yeah, so I think the opportunity, like you said, is there. Where do people go to buy these domains that they want to flip?
Well, the best place, you can either obviously buy fresh registrations from any registry you want, or you can go to the drop list, which the most common ones are like pool.com, GoDaddy drops, Namejet is another one that's very popular, Snap Names. Those are all companies where you can acquire names that people forgot to renew.
And so with those, I mean, so those are, obviously there's tons of places to get those. How, like, is there one in particular you like more than others as far as, like, here's the crazy thing, Shoemoney.com, I got it on a dropped. Like, I noticed it on GoDaddy that it was about to expire, and so I got it as a back order or whatever, paid for it, and I got it. Like, my domain. Before it was GoogleNinja.com, and then I got a cease and desist from Google, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? And I just ignored it, and then I picked up Shoemoney, and that's how Shoemoney.com domain came to be. I always had the nickname, but I never thought I'd own the domain. So that's interesting. So I think people would be surprised at what you can pick up and what people do drop.
Yeah, you can definitely pick up some good names. I mean, I saw there was one, what was it, tutorials.com this week was in the drops at GoDaddy. That it was originally registered by Oracle, and they forgot to renew it. So there's some good domains in there. If you have the cash to lay out, you could certainly get $1 million domain names for $20,000 to $50,000 in that area, 20 to 30.
Wow, that's amazing. I know I bought fighters.com. Let's see, I bought that. It was listed at $250,000, and I ended up getting it for $30,000, and then I flipped it like 2 years later for about 100 and some thousand. So, which actually made me well in the project because I basically just lost a bunch of money trying to do something that was completely outside of. I was like, oh, this would be great. I love Ultimate Fighting and all this stuff. Let's just do this. This would be a great idea. But I didn't have much success because I didn't really know anything about that industry as far as other than writing about cool stuff. So didn't have any contacts. I'm like, I'd reach out to advertising. I'm like, but I'm Shoemoney, and they were like, oh, yeah. So yeah, so that was my experience, and I was able. I think what people don't realize is just the negotiation part, and how even though people list something, a lot of times with the economy's not as bad as it was then, but there's a lot of room, and cash is king.
Well, it's kind of like on eBay and on all the auction sites. A lot of people list names just to get them indexed or get some traffic or to get something going to them, but that doesn't really mean that it's that important. I mean, they'll let them go for a lot cheaper in most cases. So, yeah, I understand exactly what you mean.
So as far as arbitraging domain names, so we talked about buying them at a lot of drop locations. and even on eBay. It seems like maybe eBay might be a good place for sale by owner.
Yeah, eBay is a good place. It's always been a good place, except now you've got people listing ridiculous domain names for, like I said, $100,000 to $500,000 just to get them indexed, and they don't really. I mean, it could be like xxxyzzpd-adam.info, and they just list them because they want to get traffic to them, but it doesn't actually. They're not actually going to obviously sell them for that. So eBay used to be a good place, maybe about 5 to 8 years ago, where you could actually buy decent domain names. And once in a while, there's a good one, but these days you have to stick more to the domain marketplaces. And you're right, you can still get great deals on good generic domain names.
I just thought for the buyer's market, just because people will list domains and it doesn't have the audience, particularly for that industry. Maybe it does, but I purchased hobbydeals.com on there for $60, and I feel it's worth a decent amount to the right person, especially now with the deal sites going ballistic. But I haven't done anything with it in 6 years, so we'll see.
The main thing you have to remember, and I tell people this a fair bit, is that it's not really the owner that sets the price for the domain name. It's what the buyer is willing to pay for it. And a lot of times you're going to sell names, or somebody's going to sell names for much higher than they expect, just because the buyer has that option. I registered about 3,500 four-letter.coms about 7 or 8 years ago, and it almost was like pot luck, but I did happen to get a bunch of good ones. And I happened to notice yesterday that there's new technology coming out that I never heard of called IGZO, I-G-Z-O. And what it is it's Apple and Sharp and all the companies are going to be changing over their iPad and iPhone and computer screens to this new IGZO technology. And it stands for, some oxide, the oxide, but it's some type of new screen that's supposedly wider and better and clearer. So I have IGZO.com, where I normally would have sold it for like a few $1,000 to get rid of it. Now I know it's going to be worth something, and you got to hold on to it.
Yep. I've owned some. I used to own MacGamer.com. I actually own MacOSX.com. I sold them for like nothing. Way back in the day, like the late 90s.
That's when I had my first Mac 512, I think.
Yeah.
I was a Macer back then.
Yeah, I was early, and then when OS X came out, I was like, really? This is what I've been waiting for forever? And then after they drastically improved it the next 5 years, and I went back to Macs. All right, so we could talk about some... I want to talk about some TLDs for a second. And for those that don't know what TLD means, it's top-level domain, and it's like, some of these like .info, .com, whatever is that. And you see these new ones come up all the time, .me, whatever, and there's always this big land rush to get it. So, do you see any on the horizon? I don't know. Is there any on the horizon, and do you feel it's worth it?
Well, there's a lot of new TLDs and GTLDs coming out shortly. Like, they just got approved by ICANN, and the application fee was $100,000 a piece. And they're going to be coming out with things like .law and .football and .web. And there's about 1,000 of them, I think, coming out. And you're going to have all kinds of them. Some are interesting. Some you could build interesting names with. But some, you could do like internet.web, or, you can make up some interesting ones, or .video, you can do shoe.video, or whatever you want. But unless you have a business plan or you have a goal, there's all kinds of stuff, but you really have to have a thought process behind it. The other thing that people don't realize about domains is that it's better to have a few really good ones than it is to have 50,000 average ones, because you can only build one business at a time if you're going to actually build it, as you know with Shoemoney. And then once that starts to build, then you can think about another one. Mm-hmm. But you really have to take the time and the effort to build a business properly, or it's never going to work.
Yeah, the guys that do, like, there's a guy I know who's got a portfolio of about 175,000 domains, and it's crazy. But what he does is he will actually just run affiliate offers on them, and he makes more off of that. And so he ran one of my offers one time and sent about 10,000 clicks a minute. It was ridiculous. And he made sales, but it wasn't what he was used to, so I don't think the space that I was in promoting was up to par with that. But That's what I want to get into too. Is like if you do have a big portfolio of type-in domains, right? And for those who don't know, type-in domains is like I don't know. Let's say you owned let's say you were beefing off me, right? And you own ShoemoneySystem.com, which is a product I had, or whatever. Those are for people who would just type in Shoemoney System and maybe it would autocomplete or to .com or something. So it's just like people manually typing it in.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Well, for one, are type-ins still happening at the rate they were? And two, what's the best way you think to monetize those?
Type-in domains, there's a couple types of domains. There's type-O domains, which would be a variation of Shoemoney. And then there's type-in domains like planets.com or witchcraft or anything like that, where people would actually type in the domain name, like you said, in the address bar or in Google, and they actually get to them. So that's what you want. I mean, you want something, but you have to build a site there that's targeted specifically towards the niche that they're looking for. Obviously, if I own planets.com and I put some site up related to buying televisions, it's probably not going to convert very well. But on planets.com, you get a lot of students looking for projects and things like that. So as long as you tie into it, which is probably the problem that you had before with the other guy directing all the traffic to you, it wasn't related to internet marketing, and people weren't really looking to learn about internet marketing. So that's why that didn't convert. But type-in domains are still the most valuable domains, whether they're 1, 2, or 3 words. If somebody's looking for a specific product, it's much better than if they're just not.
And is I know like Google has a product to monetize park domains. What do you feel about like those kinds of things, or just like the ones that you get the list feeds from to monetize those?
Yeah, there's a lot of different parking companies. Parking has gone down, whereas I used to be making close to over $140,000 a month on parking, and now it's down to close to $5,000, $5,000 to $6,000 a month. So it's dropped a lot over the last 4 years. But there still are good companies out there like Sato and Internet Traffic, a few other ones. But the problem is you have to realize that the parking is not the answer. You need to build out sites. It's in development. You've got to find associate affiliate products. You've got to find a business plan. You've got to build things out to make a site profitable. Or you can lease them out. I mean, I had a guy call me today to lease out a domain name, and I quoted him $400 a month because it wasn't a great domain name, but it doesn't make close to that on parking. So as long as you can lease it out, domain leasing is really coming alive again right now.
Why would someone want to lease a domain?
Because they don't have the money to buy it out, and it's a good generic domain name, and they want to build a business around it. But eventually they will come to you and offer it. And the very worst case for me, they're at least going to build up my traffic on the domain name with good quality content and good quality links, hopefully.
But I mean, what's in it for the person that's leasing it?
Well, for as long as they lease it, they'll be able to earn revenue through whatever products or services that they're selling.
Oh, okay. So mostly like for somebody who's a short term, like a product launch or something.
Yeah, short term, but a lot of the leases have the option to buy just like you would with a car. So maybe $400 now, but it could cost you $80,000 if you decide to buy it within the next 2 years or 3 years.
Got it. Well, that's an interesting tip. So maybe if there's a domain out there and you inquire to buy it, maybe you could inquire to lease it.
Yeah, definitely. There's nobody that would turn you down for a lease if they still own the domain name and the product.
All right. So let's talk about some, just in case we talked about making money off of it. I mean, like, so the TLDs and the new stuff, one of the things you've said that I really think is a great point for people to drive home, is just, you know, what you said, you should have a plan for the domain you're about to buy. I mean, I buy crap all the time because I think someday I'll use it, and maybe, and I will get your take on this second. I think maybe that's a good idea just because, but I have the extra cash to do it. But it's like, you know, maybe I want to use that someday, you know, and for a project someday, and it's available now, so why don't I just grab it?
Well, it's not a big risk to you or to me to spend 10 or 11 bucks, whatever it is, on a domain name. But one of the things that I read before we did this interview on your Shoemoney page was the About page. And I saw that one of the things that you like to do is something that I like to do, and it's stay ahead of new trends always and keep an eye on them. And that's something you need to do even more so in the domain industry. For example, after Blu-ray most people don't know that the next big thing coming out is Violet Ray. A lot of other stuff that I keep in. Today, the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is the hardest ticket up here, just switched to something called policy pricing or dynamic pricing policy, which means they're going to start charging more for the better teams and things like that. But you have to listen to TV, watch educational shows, watch the news while you're at home in the background working. Like I picked up something called the Liberation treatment, which was the new groundbreaking treatment for multiple sclerosis. And I bought it for $7 or $8, and I've already had offers for $75,000, $80,000 for it. So, and I keep Dr. Oz or some of the doctors in the background so I can hear breakthrough medical things, or sign up for all the lists online for new technological things that are coming out. You'd be surprised, as you know, probably how valuable that information is, because you want to get into a business before everybody else does.
Sure. And I think one of the things, I was going to just talk about is like the reviews, like when new things come out. I know whenever I launch a new product, people will register like product name scam, product name review, product name, and I don't ever pursue them, to be honest. I mean, I just... No.
Listen, at the end of the day, I believe they're all promoting your product anyway.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, if you're doing bad things or using, I mean, most of the time I copyright material, I don't pursue that, whatever, as long as it's, not, libeling me or, saying or making claims that aren't true. Otherwise, and also there's legalities about using improper text, which is a great segue into the next thing, because I've had personal experience with companies coming after me for domains I've used,
right?
Registered in the past, and I've done different things which I wouldn't really advise, because my attorneys didn't really have an experience with it. They just went with the normal, like respond, don't respond, whatever, just let it go. But what do you think about that? And let me just throw in this too. Do you think there's a difference between a site that is, or a domain that actually has a site on it that's making money, or a domain that's actually just sitting there?
Generally, there are certain companies that pursue their trademarks much more heavily, no matter what's on it. Companies like Verizon, Disney, Super Bowl, AOL, Time Warner, those are companies that really pursue their trademarks heavily, and they don't care if you have a site on it or a domain, or just it's parked or whatever it is. The best thing to do, I mean, about 8 years ago or 9 years ago, when people started getting into it, and I was guilty of it too, they registered a bunch of domain names thinking it was cool. And people do that now when they get into the industry for the first time. But it's really not cool, because you're going to cause yourself a lot of headaches. And there's still a lot of good generic or 2 or 3 or 4 word domains that you can build a site on. So generally, the rule of thumb, which is interesting, because that rule of thumb expression came about because back in the olden days, you weren't allowed to beat your spouse with anything thicker than the width of your thumb. But anyway, let's get back to this. So as far as the trademark goes, don't register any domain names with trademarks in the actual domain name, because all you're going to do is create problems for yourself. So the other type of domain to avoid is trademark typos. So if you can get something like Coke with a C-O-C-E, or Pepsi with a PEPSSI.com, I mean, don't register anything like that. It's just going to cause you legal headaches that you don't need. And this is coming from somebody who used to own DisneyStores.com.
Nice. Yeah, I've had, I had T-Mobile ringtones.com, Verizon ringtones.com, and a bunch of those, basically every major, I don't know why they didn't have it. And from pretty much every one of them, I really didn't ever respond, and I didn't fight the arbitration process. I just made them go through it all. Please don't take my advice. I'm not a lawyer, and consult one before you do anything like that. But, I thought, well, because they're making money, and they were making a lot of money, so I was worried that they would, say that I was making all this money because of their trademark, and so then I owed them a bunch of money. And that was what my lawyers were concerned about as well. So I just didn't respond, and they won the domains. With that said, do you recommend people respond to a trademark infringement?
So here's a couple tricks I'm going to give you. First of all, if your domains are at GoDaddy and you have a domain that you just got, let's say, a cease and desist letter for, and you don't want to bother fighting it because the domain isn't worth it to you, and you don't need the hassle, and it's not a premium domain name, GoDaddy has a feature called delete. So you log into your control domain manager, and you just hit the delete button, and it automatically throws it into redemption. But the trick is to go in and change the whois information first, the totally non-whois of yours, and then drop it, and it'll stay in whoever's whois you actually put it in. So you could just make up anything, and then they won't be able to track you for it or anything. Plus the fact it's in redemption, you don't have it, it's going to be gone, and they'll have to deal with it on their own.
Yep.
The other thing you can do is, if it is a domain that you do want to fight on, like I've received UDRPs for elephant.com and pig.com before. The only two times I was sued for a domain name. First, the company for elephant.com, who's the largest insurance company in the UK, they're owned by Admiral Insurance, came to me and they served me with a letter. I just bought the name for about $30,000. I love animals. I own all the animal domain names. They paid me some good money. But anyway, they served me, and then they lost the case. And then they ended up buying the domain name for me for high 6 to 7 figures. So I defended the ones that are valuable, the ones that weren't worth my time. The best thing to do is to turn them over right away if you want, or to do the delete procedure. Because if it does go to UDRP and you don't fight it like you didn't fight it, the one time one does go there, they're going to look at your history and it's not going to work in your favor.
You know, I had a friend, just another real life case example, and those who follow me know I only like to talk from experience and not like theory bullshit. So, you know, one of the things I had a friend that ran into was he had a domain that had a copyrighted thing, and he got this big cease and desist from this big company, and he was like, crap, you know, I got to find a different domain. And so he did. But when he purchased it, he said, you know, I'm buying this for my dad, who's a big fan of this X. And, you know, and through the negotiation process. Well, so he purchased it through his site on there, and the site was doing, you know, 4 or 5 figures a month, and it ended up, 4 or 5 figures. It was doing 6 figures a month steadily, low 6 figures. And he sold the actual, now it was gross revenue. He sold the actual company with the domain to USA Today. For it was over 15 million. I think it was like 15 to 20 million dollars. And so when that happened, the guy who he bought the domain from came at him because the amount was publicly disclosed, how much it was bought for like $10 million, saying that he misrepresented himself when he bought the domain because he said it was for his dad, who was a fan, and he didn't have any plans to make money with it. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, first of all, you can or cannot disclose what you intend to do with it. I've had some nice people come and approach me about domain names, and if I could tell they were telling the truth. The problem is most people do not tell the truth when they want a domain name. They figure if they say it's for a charity or a church, so you can give them a better deal. The fact is we're running a business. So once I sell a domain name for, let's say, $10,000 and some guy sells it for $10 million, there's nothing I can do about it. I just look at what I did and how I made it, and unless they have a real legal contract, I don't think he's got any case against them. Again, just like you, I'm not a lawyer, and I would suggest contacting one. But, I mean, if they had no contract saying that he had to use it as a fan site and couldn't make money off of it or anything like that, then the guy has no case.
Yep, got it. So, yeah, in his case, I mean, obviously anyone can sue for anything.
Yes.
And, I mean, I've been sued in the last year for hacking someone's Facebook page, which is completely ridiculous. And they actually found out that it was, I mean, I don't even know why they would think I do kind of know, because I was in a litigation with the company. But I'm not a hacker. Even though I did write a Facebook post about how I hacked your Facebook account. Which was read it if you want to. I'm not going to dive into it, but it's relatively easy to do over when people use their accounts over open Wi-Fi. Anyway, it's a whole different story. Okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously people can sue you for anything they want. So right. This guy thought he was entitled to this. He spent my friend had to spend money defending himself, and I think an important thing. Is that a lot of times litigation is not used as because people are right or wrong. It's used as a tool in court, and there's a or a tool to get what you want. And there's a famous quote. It comes from a movie called A Civil Action, which I don't even think he did it, but John Travolta is who I remember it by. And he says that, you know, the legal system is all about people with pride and want to prove a point, but as they go on, the first, like, there's a true fact, like 80% of legal cases are always, it might even be higher, are settled out of court. And he says it's usually the first party that comes to the realization or comes to, you know, reality loses, right? And so I think that's where I'm going with this is if somebody sues you for a domain name, you can be like, I'm not using that trademark. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Well, at the end of the day, that's great. It could cost you $50,000 to get a judge to say you're right. Or you could just give up the domain. You know, so I think that's one of the things that I've learned, and I've used that tool to accomplish what I've wanted in the past. But, you know, the big thing is, you know, when you do it and they respond, I'm not using it for this or this, you know, whatever, and then you file a lawsuit, and then they are like, oh, crap, to get representation, I got to spend all this money, even though I might be right. You know, it's, well, I don't sue people that are wrong, that are right. But, anyway, my point is that, you know, you might see something like that. Like when my friend, he had to defend, he spent well over $100,000 defending this, before they dropped the case. And it was just because the people that were suing him, the guy was at a law firm, so he had very small amount of expenses, sued him in his jurisdiction, because when they did the contract, or when they did the thing, it was like things will be disputed or whatever in New York. Well, the guys were located in New York, so it cost a fortune for him to defend that. Not everybody has $100,000 to defend a domain.
No.
All right.
I can give you a pretty quick story about something that happened to me with a lawsuit, and I've only ever sued somebody once. So the forum that I run for domain names is called dnforum.com. So I bought dnf.com and I forwarded to DN Forum. Well, this guy went out and he had been a member of my forum for 6 years. He goes out specifically, buys dnf.ca, puts a competing forum with all the same topics and everything as me, and I have a trademark obviously on DN Forum, so I did have to sue him, but to make a long story short, it cost me about $85,000 and I won. Doesn't sound much like a winner to me, but I did get the domain name just because I was protecting my brand. Right.
And again, that's a pride thing. That's a, you know, like it's a, I've had many lawsuits that cost me a lot more money, but it's, I believe if someone is out to do you harm, and someone has, you know, forethought and malice, like would be like what, murder one or whatever, is what you have to prove. But, you know, like, I just think, like, obviously this guy, he saw your success, he wanted to steal. Let's just be honest. He wanted to steal from your success. And so that's what he did, and you went after him because, and the cool thing about that is, I mean, if you look at me, if you Google Shoemoney lawsuit, you're going to find 20 different things. And that's because I go after people that I believe are out to do me harm. Or you know, or more in particular, my brand. I've spent 12 years building my brand, and for some, you know, I'm about to really explode on some expletives here, but for some person to, you know, go out there and, you know, just start making money in a sketchy way, selling products, saying they're mine, sometimes even, you know, I'm coming for you. And that's exactly how I felt. I wasn't going to let somebody profit off the same 12 years that I put into building DN Forum for some guy just to set up a forum. And then he even had the balls to start emailing my members to come and try out his forum and stuff. So I had to draw the line. All right. Yeah, I could go on about some other things. The cool thing is once you do it and it's publicized, when people Google it, you really only have to do it once. Like, you only really have to. So the value, even though that, as you said, wasn't maybe cost effective, going forward, when you have a precedent of doing that, people think twice before screwing over your product. I mean, so much so that I've had people say, like, hey, you know, I like this service you're doing. I have this domain and I want to, you know, have a blog about your service. Will you sue me? You know, and so so much so that people are tread very, very lightly.
You usually say, well, since you told me and now I know about it, yes.
I gotta say, like, almost, I don't remember one time my response is always like, look, as long as you're not, because people will register like Shoemoney System is a product I have, which is sold a lot, and people will register like Shoemoney Scam, Shoemoney Review, Shoemoney whatever, and the title is always like, don't buy it, it's a scam, right? Well, then they usually always end up promoting it. I don't have a problem with that. No problem whatsoever with that. But when they're doing it and saying, and recommending someone else's product, I got a problem with that. So
I agree with that.
So different things, and when people are asking for permission, they're usually not doing sketchy things. They just want to be like, hey, here's what I'm doing, and and I usually, I let things slide all the time, and for the most part, if people want to talk bad about it, like review the product and whatever, fine. But if you make false, stuff, and if you hate it and whatever, and you want to make fun of me or whatever, I could care. It's not, that's that's your right most of the time, even if you're using copyrighted images, as long as they're in context.
Well, that's one thing that Bob Parsons at GoDaddy used to teach me, is it doesn't matter if it's good PR or bad PR, as long as they're talking about you.
That guy is a very smart guy, very polarizing, always keeps it in the news, and I respect that so much. Okay. Now, talking about some other stuff here, and I totally missed your video there, so that might be a little weird. But so talking about some other stuff, let's get on to some other questions here. We've covered the legal aspect. Just going forward, what are you up to? I know you're part of the traffic conference.
Yeah.
I know you've got some other stuff going on, and I know you're also doing some SEO stuff.
Yeah. I'll give you a few things. Like I said, I want to turn into a real promo video because I'm here to help and give information. But I run a company called nichewebsites.com because I know niche websites and authority websites are the big thing for Google. We do about 1,200 sites a month for customers. They range from $200 to $2,000, and we do a lot of good lead generation sites that get ranked for affiliate products, regular products within a week. And I can rank pretty much for any keyword in the top 10 in Google, Bing, Yahoo. I also run one of the largest reputation repair companies on the web at reputationrepair.com. That's about $145K a month, so it's a pretty profitable business for me, where people have articles or pictures that they don't want shown anymore, or people gave them bad reviews. We can get them down, things like that. The Targeted Traffic Show, if you're looking at becoming a domainer or looking to learn the industry, it's a 3-day event. I think the next one is around October the 20th in Miami. And it's a fabulous show. I speak at all the conferences for about an hour to 2 hours. And I like to meet everybody. And if you're looking to become a power player in the domain industry quickly, that's a show to go to. TargetedTraffic.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on here. I know, and I don't think people will perceive it as you're being salesy at all, because you're a big person who gives value. And honestly, that's a lot of the things we do, business comes to us because, they've seen a webinar or something, and they know what you're talking about. So, or they know that you know what you're talking about, rather. So, Adam,
the best thing we can do is always pay it forward. That's what I like to do. People did it for me when I was starting out. So at the end of every video, I like to give my contact information so people can reach out and contact me directly, and I'll help them for nothing. So I'll just give it. My Skype is adam.dicker. My email is adam@dcg.com. And my cell number is 416-884-0535. And when I say reach out to me and I'll gladly help you, I mean it.
That's awesome. You can't ask for any more than that. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for talking. And, if you have any comments on this, just comment below. I'm going to post this on my blog. And I don't know if Adam's going to use it anywhere, but whatever. So
I will. Don't worry. It's a good video.
It's all good. Well, thanks so much, Adam. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.